Okay guys, so I'm gonna make this video, try to make this video short and sweet. I've attempted a few times and every time it tends to be a little bit longer. Um, I'm coming to you from the comfort of my own home, my own bed. It's very comfortable, so I like it here, so I'm gonna do it here. Um, but, uh, but yeah, so I wanted to start off by talking about, I got my KJV out here. I wanted to start about talking about how Christians and the church in general will ignore parts of the Bible that they feel are kind of like touchy topics that nobody wants to address. And they'll just ignore those sections of the Bible and just kind of focus on the ones that they do want. So that way they can feel, righteous and all this kind of stuff. And this is kind of just my point to bring to the surface that in Christianity, there's so much stuff that people don't even take serious, and it's something to me that is partly kind of the reason why. It's not the reason why I stepped away from Christianity by any means, but it showed me that Christians are more interested in playing tradition and playing the role of what they grew up in and just holding on to their beliefs and ignoring, their religion, but just holding on to their tradition more than anything. And I guess nothing new is new under the sun, right? Because we can look at Jesus and he kind of dealt with the same thing with a whole bunch of people who were more holding on to their traditions than anything. But I wanted to bring up the topic of divorce. I'm divorced, and so I was married to a Baptist. I'm Baptist. Sorry, not am. Was independent fundamental Baptist, and I was married to a Pentecostal. And so after my divorce with her, I didn't leave. I was trying to do the godly thing, stay in the marriage and all this kind of stuff. I didn't want her to break off the marriage because there was no adultery. There was no we'll get into that about what the Bible says is okay to get a divorce, when it's okay to not get a divorce, and all of that. But nonetheless, there are many situations, many people in the church that are divorced not for any specific reason, and divorced not for any specific reason, and they're remarrying another person, and everybody's just kind of sweeping it under the rug, and in my opinion, on the whole thing. So anyway, so let's just kind of get into the meat and potatoes here. So Hebrews 11, I'm sorry, yes, Hebrews 11, where did it go? I'm sorry, Hebrews 10:26. This is just about talking about willfully sinning. It says punishment for willful sin. Hebrews 10:26 says, "For if we sin willfully, after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins," right? But certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. And then on the 31, it says, "It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God," right? But the idea just being that, God is very much disgusted by willful sin. If we go to James 4:17, obviously everybody kind of knows James 4:17. It's kind of overused, but it's just, "Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is a sin," right? So if yes, this is appropriate or whatever, and you don't do that thing. So that this just brings out this idea that not doing bad things is going to keep you safe, because a lot of Christians kind of have that mentality, is like, well, as long as I'm not out there, I'm not doing drugs, I'm not doing this, not doing that, as long as that's out there, I don't have to worry about it. Well, in the Bible it says that even if you know that something is good, if you know that you should be doing something and you're not doing it, let's say that you have a gravitational pull, or kind of a calling to work in children's ministry or something like that, and you're ignoring it, and you're just trying to suppress it, you're ignoring it, you don't want to do it, but you know that's what you're supposed to be doing because that's what God's calling you to do, then you're sinning, right? You're not doing anything bad, you're not out there drugs, whatever, but you're still out there sinning because you're not doing what you know is good and what you know you should be doing, right? So that's kind of the caveat with that. Well, the thing with Christianity is people who divorce and remarry, the Bible gives clear kind of structure on when it's okay. So it says Matthew 5:31-32, and there, this was kind of something that the Pharisees were trying to throw the law at Jesus, and Jesus was just like not having it, right? But it says Matthew 5:31-32. It was also said, "Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." So, except for cheating, in the Bible, it's clear as day. The only allowance that there is for a divorce and remarry is if your spouse cheated on you, if there is sexual immorality. And my situation, I didn't cheat on my wife. My wife didn't cheat on me. We weren't necessarily having financial issues. It's just her and I were two very, very opposite people. And I kind of wanted to hold on to the religious upbringing and go to church and all that kind of stuff. And she wanted to just kind of, I'm not going to be judgmental because I'm not judging her. Because now my belief is that it doesn't necessarily matter. But she didn't want to go to church and, be the upright Christian that I grew up to be and I wanted for my family at the time, right? And so, yeah. So we got divorced. She left me, and, according to the, I forget, I should have found that before I started recording, but I'm already recording, so I'm just going to run with it. But essentially, it's like if you do get divorced, you can't remarry. If you do remarry another person, well, like it says right here in Matthew 19:3-9, Pharisees came up and tested him, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife?" He answered, "Have you not read that he who created them for the beginning made them male and female, and said, 'Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined them together, let not men separate.' They said to him, 'Why then did Moses command one to give away a certificate?'" And that's just kind of going into us because, people were just trying to be unruly and all this kind of stuff. And it's just saying when two people come together, they become one under God, and they should never separate, right? That's kind of the thing there. And you can go and go and go. There's a little bit in the New Testament, a little bit in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy. It also kind of says the same thing, where it's like a man that finds uncleanliness in his woman can give her a certificate of divorce, and that's kind of all old law. I'm only looking into things into the New Testament because that's all typically new law, which is what's after the blood of Christ, that we're under the new law and all that kind of stuff, right? But anyways, Romans 7:3. So here's another one that I wanted to bring up here is so it says Romans 7:3. "So then if, while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress." So if you get in a divorce and the woman goes and she marries into another man, she's committing adultery, right? Now keep in mind that the Bible says, for if you know to do it good and do it not to you, it's a sin. So she knows that she's not supposed to be in that marriage, because she's not supposed to separate from her one, which is the one that she vowed to God that she'd be with for the rest of her life. So for a person to get divorced and then to remarry, right, that under the Bible is sin. And so every single day that you wake up and you're married to this new person, never mind that you may have a beautiful connection, never mind that you may love going to church together, he may work in the youth ministry, you may work with the children, y'all are involved in the church, all this kind of stuff. Based off of our book here, you are still sinning, and deliberately sinning. God doesn't like it, because you know that you shouldn't be in that marriage based off of the rules of the new law. You shouldn't remarry if your husband is still alive. If you divorce and your husband dies, open game. Or if you divorce and your husband dies, then it's open game. You can remarry, whatever. But if you divorce and your husband is still alive and then you go and you remarry, well, now you're an adulteress. You're committing adultery. You know that you're committing adultery. Thus, you're sinning. So the answer is, if you do divorce, you should stay alone for the rest of your life. And like me, if you got divorced when you were 24, that's a long time to just be like, okay, I'm never going to let love back into my life. It's just extremely oppressive. And this is where I'm talking about where Christianity is just incredibly oppressive towards women and towards just its believers in general. But and that's why, for me, it's hard to believe this to be a perfect text. But I'm going to get more into it. I'll make some more videos about pointing out kind of the inaccuracies, because that's something that kind of is a hot topic there. I have a lot of people who are like, where? I'm like, okay, I'm getting to it. Sorry, I hold a job. I got to pay bills, so I can't do this all. I can't make this the focus of my life, and I don't want to. I want to enjoy my life. This is just for people who, like me, were struggling and all this kind of stuff. But anyways, so I've given you enough there. The point that I'm trying to make is that, Christians look away. I know so many couples, my parents included, that according to the Bible should not be married. And the difference is that my parents know that. My parents know that they shouldn't be married, and they know that they shouldn't be married under the Bible, and they continue to be married. They have a ministry together. They fly to Honduras twice, 3, 4, 5 times a year, and they have a ministry where they share the gospel with children and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you're doing all of these things great for the church, but you're ignoring intentionally this massive thing that God is very much not okay with, and you may have convinced yourself that you're okay with, this situation, that, it was just messed up, all this kind of stuff, but everything's okay, and we're continuing on with our life, and we're serving God and all this kind of stuff. That you shouldn't be remarrying if you have a previous husband, according to the Bible, that you swear to live by. And that's the thing to me, is just that brings up kind of the hypocrisy of Christianity and in the churches, because it's not something that they talk about. There's not a lot of churches that are preaching at their members who are divorced and remarried, telling their divorced and remarried to go back to their original husbands. Well, guess what? The Bible also says that you can't do that. I want to say it was Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 24, 1-4. When a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanliness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it in her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, and if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife, after that she is defiled. For this is an abomination before the Lord, and thou shalt not cause the land of the sin. Well, this was all Moses talking. When we go to the New Testament and hear what Jesus had to say about that, what Jesus said was, those laws were created because people were unruly. And when two people come together and vow to God that they are going to be together, which is what you do when you say your vows, right? You vow to God that you are going to be with a person through thick and thin and all that kind of stuff. And, look up the penalty of breaking a vow that you've made to God. It's not pretty. Anyways, I don't say this to scare you. I don't say this to judge you. I don't say this. You have to remember where I come from. I'm coming from a place of leaving Christianity, having been divorced, and then walking my own spiritual path directly towards God, away from Christianity, and looking back at it. It's like when you're inside of a car and the check engine light comes in on the car. There's a few ways that you could tackle the check engine light, right? When the warning light comes on and starts flashing in your religion, there's a few things that you can do. You can pray that the warning light goes away. Maybe it goes away. You can ignore it, as so many people do, and just allow it to flash and just look the other way, or maybe take a piece of black tape and put it over the light so that it's not blaring in your face. And just ignore that because that's not something that you understand and you don't want to address it. And then you have what I did, which was exit the vehicle, walk outside, pop the hood, look at the internal workings of it, and decide as to whether, why is that an issue? Why is that light flashing, right? And, what it came down to was just, I love this book. It's a great book, but I don't think it's 100% perfect in its writings, and that's because a lot of these books, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, a lot of the books in the New Testament, a lot of people don't know this. They weren't written immediately after Jesus. We have a lot of things that are quoted in red here. John 5:40, but if you believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words, right? John 5:47, right? Just in there, this is something that's painted in red because this is supposedly came directly out of Jesus's mouth. But then when you look at the book of John and you research the book of John, you realize that the book of John wasn't written and organized until almost 20 years or something like that. After, I don't feel like doing that right now, 18 minutes. I'm not trying to turn this video into a really, really long thing. I made a previous video about it, about the gap between when Jesus spoke and when it got written down, and it's relatively dramatic. And that's why for me, 50 years, a 50-year gap between his teachings. And so you've got just a very large amount of very inaccurate information, as well as other spots that, slowly, video after video, I'll kind of go into this thing. But the reality is that I decided, I wanted to find God for myself, and I wanted to know God. And I prayed to God that he would lead me on a path that led me directly to him without any external forces, no religion, no denomination, no this, no that, put me on the path that leads me directly to you. And he has, and it's been tough. I had to start off by having everything stripped away from me and include everything. And, but I'm standing here now about 3 years later looking back, and happier that I've ever been that God's taken me on that journey, because, you know, it's one of those things where it's like I stand here and I look back now and I have nothing but compassion on people who are still inside of the church and still inside of the religion, because it's such a dense place to be. You know, it's such a judgmental place to be, and the reason why people are there is because there's a sense of belonging and there's a sense of camaraderie that doesn't exist on this side. You know, whenever I went walking off into my own spiritual journey, I didn't come across another person who even believed remotely what I believed for about 2.5 years that I went walking on my own before I found somebody who even shared similar beliefs. And when I found that person, you know, I almost started crying, because it was like coming in out of the desert, you know. But yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, that this is kind of the reason why a lot of people are leaving the churches in large masses, and kind of just going towards being agnostic or Unitarian or something like that, or like a spiritualist center like the Unity churches and stuff like that, is just because, you know, they understand that this is a study guide, right? This is a brilliant, beautiful book that gives you a lot of ways on how to live your life, how to express yourself, and how to treat other people, and all that kind of stuff. But on a word for word basis, this isn't 100% magic, pure, uncorrupted in its translation. And of course, over time, I'll put more and more. Now, we didn't talk about anything about the Bible contradicting today. We didn't talk about any of that. All we were doing today is just showing how in churches, in Christianity, in a lot of Christian groups, people will look away and turn a blind eye in their blatant sin. According to the Bible, their blatant sin that would damn them to hell, and they're going to turn a blind eye and continue to play religious, which is something that a lot of churches do. But anyways, I just wanted to put that out there. I just wanted to let you guys know that, digest that, and kind of come to that realization of, oh, you know, wow, I do know a lot of people who are divorced, who've gotten together, that weren't married from infidelity, and, you know, that didn't divorce from infidelity and got remarried, and yeah, they're just kind of blatantly sinning publicly. The church doesn't speak about it because it's a touchy topic that nobody wants to address nowadays, which is very much like many other topics and stuff. So anyways, I love you guys. I had fun putting this video together. Sorry that it hit 23 minutes, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, see y'all.